necessity creates opportunity. So for me, I had to make movies. From a young age, I really wanted to clear the misconception about my country and my religion. Like that was, till this point, this is what drives me to wake up every morning and make movies, because no one was making movies that cleared the misconception about Islam and Arabia and Saudi Arabia. And there's so much negative press about who we are and who we are as a nation, who we are as a people and as a religion.
We lack an infrastructure in Zambia, a film infrastructure. It's growing, but it's very much, I'm not any different to every other filmmaker in Zambia. They're all self-taught. And I find it amazing that there's an industry there. And it's how you described how it was like in Saudi, to just do anything because they don't have a film mandate. You have to go through the police, the ministries. You have to make sure everybody's happy and explain to them why it's important. And it takes, so the pre-production is long, because you have to build everything has to be built. We don't have, like in London, things you can take for granted. You can go to like a film office, they'll find you locations and they've got lists of them. You don't have that, and you have to really be on the ground and just everybody's spreading out and just getting very basic things done. So locations, you have to go to each place, explain all the stuff. It's a lot of pre-work, and I think and there's no funding, there's no film finance. They have now funding for the National Arts Council, but it's spread across so many sectors, and film is not really the priority, I guess. So it's a pot of money that everybody's fighting to get, and it's very competitive, and it's not enough to make films in a way, films that you want to have international reach. So. Internationally, there's very few people, but they're still there, filmmakers doing things that reach internationally, but most people are doing things local, and that's really thriving, and that's really amazing. So in terms of getting film finance, I get mine from Britain. I've grown up in Britain, so I'm fortunate enough to have access to the state funding. That brings its own set of problems, because you have, and I'm still trying to figure out why it's so problematic, because it's my second time doing it. So you just have a very different, so what you have is they have a very specific way by which they do things. And for the life of them, to get them to do things that for local, it's very, very hard. So you're forcing a system that they believe works for them. It works for them, it works in sort of Anglo-Saxon settings or European, whatever you want to call it, Western setting. You bring it to Zambia, they don't understand why you need a year's prep, because they've timed 6 weeks. So it has to be 6 weeks. Then it's a lot of paperwork. So you have the title guinea fowls, on becoming guinea fowls. The paperwork you have to have for guinea fowls is more than people. Wow. It's insane. So the people work long hours. Nobody cares about that. But the guinea fowls, you have to, handle them a certain way. You have to have clearances. You have to have a vet look at them. I mean, and these things we don't necessarily have in Zambia. So you have to find a substitute of each of these things. So you're bogged down in paperwork a lot. So the mindset, so I still, having done this twice, I find every time I start a film, I'm like, how can we just get funding from here? Why do we have to look outside? I have the same question, or a version of here that understands what it's like to make films on the ground. But I still, I still get funding, and I'm fortunate enough to do that. I think I wouldn't have made my film without that support. But it comes at a very high price. You'd think it's great, I've got money, but it really comes, I feel, at a very high price, because also what they'll do is prioritize their own people. So you're fighting for everything, even to have a head of department from Africa. I always say, start in Zambia, then we make our way out. So start Zambia, then we go to the other African countries. It's not, because they'll check the credentials. Oh, this person has IMDb, but because they're European, they put all their IMDb credits there. But this other guy has just as much as experience, but he's not on IMDb, he's just done lots of local production. So you're fighting for everything, and and usually, because on our contract, what people don't realize, because you don't have that necessarily in Europe, is that the money that you get from these broadcasters, they have to okay everyone you hire. That's why it's always a fight. So they have to okay it. So if they don't think your local guy is good, they will set him aside and bring in their guys. So that and who doesn't know the local what happens locally. So it's for me it's a fight. I would love what you have and what you guys have access to funding in the country. I think that's important, and I hope we build to that in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the passion in your eyes. I mean, I'm asking myself question now, like really, like it takes a lot of time and a lot of mental fights to go through what, like 2 years, 3 years, 7 years of period to make one film. Like, why? You know, why don't we just do something else? Why films?
I ask that every time I ask why. Is there something else I can do? I really do. I'm going through it now.
No, don't give up. Keep going. All right, back to Hamzah. Could you share some challenges in all the stages of making movies for your films? I mean, being in emerging markets, you know, like you play so many roles. I mean, we talked about your recent film. Like, I know, like you've shot outside of Saudi and in Saudi too, and I just wonder why, like, not shooting the whole thing in Saudi versus shooting some part of it outside. Is it because of story? Also, being emerging markets, I'm sure there's a lot of like challenges you have. You play different hats, like directors, writer, sometimes producer, sometimes, I don't know, maybe, yeah, tell me.
I mean, I guess every movie is going to break your heart and break your brain at a certain point. And it is I'm also asking myself always, why am I making movies when I can just sell potato chips? But it's driven by passion. So necessity creates opportunities. So for me, I had to make movies. From a young age, I really wanted to clear the misconception about my country and my religion. Like that was, till this point, this is what drives me to wake up every morning and make movies, because no one was making movies that cleared the misconception about Islam and Arabia and Saudi Arabia. And there's so much negative press about who we are and who we are as a nation, who we are as a people and as a religion. And that's basically what drove me to do whatever it takes to make a movie. So my move to the US was driven by that need. But then landing in the US, I wasn't really welcomed. I mean, it was a lovely country to get stuff done in. There is infrastructure, there's rebates and whatnot. But you're still not. They want to look at the Marvel movies. They want to look at the Hollywood stars. You're just another foreigner there. But I had no option. Like I tried going to Saudi. It was very difficult, very, very difficult. So to make a Saudi movie, we had to make Saudi movies outside of Saudi. So I'll give you a couple of examples. For the movie Rupture, we had to shoot most of it in Romania. And for a couple of the Saudi scenes, we actually built something that looked like Saudi, but it wasn't in Saudi. And then for my next film, How I Got There, same thing. We wanted to film in Saudi, we couldn't. We went to Mexico. We found a location that looked very much like Saudi. Why did we do that? It was very difficult. Like the timing of when we were making these movies, Saudi was such an emerging market. Everything was too expensive. To rent a camera was, oh my God, it was cheaper for me to get my second camera assistant to fly with the lenses, with the camera from LA than to get it from a local vendor. So we just have to make these movies, and of course we want to be authentic to the place we were born and raised in. I want to be as authentic as possible, but this wasn't available for me. Now it's becoming more and more available. Are there challenges? Of course, 100%. The biggest challenge we have is a cash flow problem in Saudi, and this is why even with the funds that are there, it's such an emerging market that even the financiers and the government incentives are still at a young stage. They're trying to figure out with us, with the filmmakers, inviting us, like, what do you guys need? How do we help you get what you need? But the biggest problem we have is a cash flow issue. And this is why we end up bringing, as you said, a lot of co-productions. So right now for my current movie, Running Dry, we brought in a Turkish company to help us, AZ Celtic. And we are borrowing from their experiences, and we're borrowing from their teams to help us make a very authentic Saudi movie. Another challenge we have is we don't have access to a lot of qualified filmmakers or below the line people, just like you were saying. No one is, now there are people who went abroad and studied, but we don't have universities or educational institutions that taught filmmaking, 3 or 4 years ago. Now they're starting. So as much as you want to be authentic and as much as you want to tell your own stories, you're just, the system is not there yet. However, with all that, I'm saying things are changing. Finally, we see that governments around the world are looking at cinema as a tool to kind of do what I'm trying to do, clear the misconception about the people. Cinema actually makes money for certain regions and governments. If you make a bunch of movies, and I usually use the example of Crazy Rich Asians, you make a movie that's commercially successful, all of a sudden the tourism will increase in that country. Or people will actually go, it's interesting. I have a medical company, let me sign a deal with a Saudi guy, because you just normalize the image of a Saudi person. So don't underestimate, and I hope there are financiers here, don't underestimate the power of investing in filmmakers, because we are doing your job for you. We are removing the veil. We are showing the truth about your culture.